Now, I'm delighted to say Matt Williams is with us as we continue our build-up to Ireland's eventual victory in the Six Nations. Isn't that how we're supposed to think about these things, Matt?
Joe, the power of positive thinking goes a long way, doesn't it, mate?
Absolutely. What do you think is going to happen? What's your gut instinct? And in advance of tournaments like this, do you feel those things like, this is feeling like a French year to me, or do you exclusively wait and see how things evolve so you can diagnose the patterns post-event?
Joe, I wish I could just diagnose the patterns post-events, because then I'd be right all the time. But it's you do have to look forward, and you do have to predict, and you do have to think. So if we just, I'm a great believer in, you got to look at the history of the game to predict what's going forward. And it's not always 100% correct. But if we just consider the last time Ireland won a Grand Slam, pretty recent times, in their first game against, it's the same year. So in that year they had France away and England away. So very, very tough year for Ireland to win a championship or a Grand Slam. That's what made 2018 so extraordinary. But if you consider that year, what Ireland had to do to win that was, we remember the Johnny Sexton field goal, the great call, spinning by Dave, as he called it. But that was an extraordinary sequence of events that led up to that incredible drop goal. Ireland had a 22 dropout. They did something like 35 phases, and then Sexton did this incredible drop goal from 48 out that we all thought he took too early. And what did we know? Went straight over the black dot. Unbelievable. Then they go to Twickenham and play the first half of the Irish performance at Twickenham is the best half of rugby I've ever seen an Irish team play. So to do that, they have to do extraordinary things. That does not mean they are incapable of doing that this year. They are capable, especially if they keep doing what they did in November, which was so encouraging and so positive. And I think for the first time in all my time in Ireland, really playing a brand of rugby that suits Ireland and can be successful, as they showed in November. But this is a very good French side. The nations are much more even, with the exception of Italy, than they were in that particular year. England are not as strong. I think they can win there. But you'd have to say, if I've got to look at it, this is a magnificent French side, a French side on the improve. They've changed so much in their whole structure that it's hard to go past France. But Ireland can still have a very, very positive Six Nations, and we can't rule out a possible win.
We had Jeremy Gus got on last week. It was Keith Wood's 50th, and I was making the point at the end, like, Eddie Jones is going to be forced to play a load of young players here, and in the long run, in terms of the World Cup, that's actually a good thing. And he was like, well, you don't really want to be forced into anything. But I still actually feel like the injuries as they're coming in the long run are actually the right thing for England, because it takes the pressure off some of the players there now. Jones is already casting forward to the World Cup. Not for him this, my KPIs insist that I must win the Six Nations. It's the be-all and end-all. He's like, I've got to win a World Cup. That's how I'm going to be judged here. My time in England is going to be judged my times in the World Cup. And now with no Laws and no Farrell, all of a sudden somebody else has to captain the team. And as a result, somebody will have experience of captaining the team, either through success or failure. But when you roll around to the World Cup, and that intensity for those 5, 6, 7 weeks, and the injuries happen, he's looking around going, oh, you've already captained the team. You already captained the team. You've captained the team. This is great.
Yeah, you did right. You did right, Joe. I think Tom Curry will get that captaincy with Courtney Laws out now, who was going to deputise for Farrell. I think Laws will be back next week, but you're exactly correct. If you look back on some of the great World Cup winning sides, and I'll take you back to a long time ago, Australia in 1991, there was something like 9 Wallaby captains across that team. So 9 guys had captained Australia. In those days they had tour games, so they weren't all test matches. But that leadership is just invaluable. And we have a saying, 23 players, 23 leaders, 1 player, 1 captain. I'll get it right in a minute. So, leadership on a field is so important, and losing leaders like Laws, 90 test cap man, Farrell is a great player and a great leader. You can't underestimate what that does to a side in the short term. But Jones, we come back, and I've said this on your show before, Jones got Australia to a World Cup in 2003. He was an assistant to South Africa when they won in 2007. He got England to a World Cup final under his own steam in 2019. Like there's no coach done that. Eddie Jones knows World Cups better than anyone else on the planet, and he is understanding that if he can get experience and games under the belt of the squad, that stands you in great stead in the World Cup. Again, we look back. When New Zealand won in 2011, they were down to their third out half. Dan Carter and Aaron Cruden were out of the World Cup final, and therefore they needed that depth, and that depth came through that day for them. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think Eddie Jones is sweating at all. Look, England's weird. You've got to win everything. If you're a coach of England in any sport, you've got to win everything all the time, every day, or you're in trouble, which is ridiculous. And that's why their sport, in their game sport, has not been as successful as it is, because they're setting goals that are impossible. So there's pressure on teams that is ridiculous. So, but Eddie Jones is smart enough and controls the media and the agenda enough to say we're looking ahead to the World Cup, not just this Six Nations.
Yeah, I spoke to him actually at the press launch, and that was very much the vibe. He said initially we want to win the Six Nations, and ultimately we're going to win the World Cup. And that's the way he sort of spun it. So, yeah, he definitely gives off that vibe.
Ashley, and look, he's right. You know, he's right. And I've got to say, when Eddie Jones's time in Australia, so Eddie and I were literally coming through at the same time in our coaching careers. I started a few years before him at the Waratahs, and we coached against each other when he was at the Brumbies. But we were part of the World Cup systems going back as young coaches to 1991 when I started. And the Australians in the 90s and up until Eddie's, that 2003 World Cup, they had a phenomenal system that was focused. It was linked to the Olympic system on a 4-year cycle. And they really got the 4-year cycle, which no one else in the world, and with the resources Australia had, we had no resources. Australia won the 1999 World Cup. We had Andrew Blades at tight head, and really, if Andrew went down, we had Glenn Panaho was a loose head, was converted. We had one tight head prop. So the resources were so scarce, but they managed them brilliantly. Now, that system ridiculously has been pulled apart in Australia by some horrid administration, and I don't think they'll ever get it back, sadly. But Eddie, crucially to this conversation, Eddie spent 15 years, best part of, in that system, and he understands it really, really well. And he's got a 4-year plan mapped out, and you've got to roll with these punches. But sometimes these punches, like losing your two captains, losing Farrell and Laws, they provide opportunities for others, and you never know what those opportunities will throw up. The second part of that, for this Six Nations, Eddie's just taken every bit of pressure off his English team. The pressure's on other teams now to beat them. He's saying, well, we're all got to lose injuries. No pressure here. We're looking ahead. We're just going to give our boys some time. Again, really smart leadership from Eddie, where now everyone goes, oh, all right, no pressure on England. Who's going to win besides England? Really smart play from Eddie. And he's done it for years. Very, very smart stuff.
The other thing that's happening with England might be a slight iteration in the style of play, and that's the other side of this. You can take the pressure off, but they do need to adapt to how the game is going. And the next time they come up against South Africa in a World Cup final or a semi-final or whatever, they need to be able to deal with whatever gets thrown at them. And it would be good to see how that game would have gone if there hadn't been a significant injury to their prop and the scrum hadn't been completely collapsing and going backwards. But what they have done, it seems, is inject a bunch of Harlequins players into the team because they're playing so well. Is this a harbinger of a complete shift in how England are going to try and keep the ball alive and play a total 15-man game? What's your instinct around that?
I think we've seen a bit of a shift, a welcome shift, I might add you, around the world that's taken time, but it's reacted to the way defences have been put in place since the Lions went to New Zealand 5 years ago and introduced a rushing defence that was catching offences behind the game line and really, was a blight on the game, to be honest. It was highly effective defence, but gee, it made for some ugly, horrible games of rugby. None more than the Lions tour to South Africa last year, which was totally uninspiring and in fact was damaging to the game, in my opinion. But as a response to that, teams around the world are taking more risks, and they're looking for creative tens. Beauden Barrett, Richie Mo'unga down with New Zealand. You got Marcus Smith, this really great young talent emerging. Finn Russell is a free spirit. And we've got to say Johnny Sexton's back to some great form. I thought in 2019 Johnny Timon caught him and Johnny was finished. And he's proved me wrong. And what a champion! Champions get up when they can't. He's playing some really good rugby. But Marcus Smith is bringing something that England perhaps haven't had for a long time, and he's changing the way England are playing. Because if you've got an asset, you've got to use that. You can't come as a coach and say, I want to play this game, even though I have players that don't fit that style. I want to play that game. You've got to look at your assets. So what have I got? What's the guys I've got? How can I maximise the strength and the talent of this team? And that's what a great coach does. That's what Eddie Jones is trying to do. So there's a plus there of Smith trying to do that. I actually think there's going to be a reaction from opposition defensive coaches to Marcus Smith. Your first year, you get a bit, when you're a really talented young guy, first year you get a bit of a free run because no one sort of knows how to stop you. So I think it'll be really interesting this year how the opposition defences react to the talent of Smith and his obvious talent. Can they shut him down? Can they do something that limits his instinctive play? So there's a whole lot, and I think that's really fascinating for all us rugby nerds out there to watch. England want to play an expansive game. You did hear me right. I did say England want to play an expansive game. God save us. I am right. I am saying that. And the opposition will try and shut them down. And that's going to be a really fascinating aspect. And I think that week one, when they play Scotland, if Hamish Smith, I hope he's fit and well, plays, that Scottish back row, they're a good back row. I wonder if they've got something in store. If it's not Scotland, is it Sean Edwards, the defensive coach of France, that'll bring something out? So I think all these little subplots are really, really fascinating.
And Matt, just looking ahead to Wales and Ireland on Saturday, at the moment, Wales, they're suffering a lot of injuries at the minute. A lot of people seem to be sort of writing them off. I spoke with Dan Bigger last week, and he just said, look, if we to listen to what everybody is saying on the outside, we may as well not turn up. What's your view on how Wales are at the moment?
Well, I think in Ireland, we just keep underestimating Wales. I mean, last year, you watch that first 20 minutes of the opening match, Ireland versus Wales last year, and up until Peter O'Mahony got sent off, Ireland were going to win that match by 15 points, 20 points. And then Wales come up and they win the championship, really unlucky not to get a Grand Slam in some ways. So you can't write them off. And I feel the Irish rugby community has, and it's hard not to when you look at the players that are out of that side, Ken Owens and Alan Wynne-Jones just to start with, Lee Halfpenny, they've lost so many quality players. And their provinces, what throws us out, their provinces are so poor. But when they put on that scarlet jersey, they are playing brilliantly. And we've got to respect that. And I think this is what we're saying out here in the media and in the rugby community, but I'm certain within the Irish camp that they're not writing them off. They're saying all the things I just said. Look, we haven't respected these guys enough over the years. We'll do it. But I still think at home, the record of Ireland at home, the Aviva, is nothing short of extraordinary. And if they come out and play the way they did in November, and I really, really hope they do, because that was so encouraging, so good to watch, and so successful. It bloody well worked. If they do that again, I think they'll do exceptionally well against Wales. But Wales, we guarantee this, they are not coming to Dublin to lie down. There will be a performance out there for the guys in the Welsh jersey to get a chance. I think it's going to be a really, really entertaining game of rugby.
You mentioned Sexton and the great champion that he is, and there's talk in the press conferences that Ash was in during the week where he's already talking about a new contract to take him through to the World Cup. It was never a secret. We all knew this was going to happen, assuming that his fitness survived and his desire survived, and that's clear that is still there. So he wants to go to the World Cup. Is there any world where Ireland come to regret the fact that we're playing all our frontline players at the moment and that we're not doing what England are doing, although England have obviously been forced into it this far out from the World Cup, and that we're not creating the real depth? Like, we don't know what Joey Carberry's like when it's his job for 4 or 5 weeks in a row. We don't know what whoever else is actually going to be. What will Jack Carty be like if he's given a run behind a team that's going well? We don't really know these things.
I think if you look across the breadth of the squad, I think there's great depth right across the squad. Tight 5 back row, it's gee whiz, it's everywhere. Bundyaki, might make the 23, yet he's a Lion. So, we've got a few injuries on the wings. There's a little bit there, but there's still some really good players we can bring in. And if everyone's fit, it is a very, very, it's a great depth chart that Coach Farrell has, except at 10. Except at 10. And, G, you're 100% correct. To give the coaches, to put some rationale into what the coaches are doing, Joey Carberry's just had this horror run of injuries where it has been impossible to play him, and he's lost a little bit of confidence. And just when he was getting that confidence back, that last kick against New Zealand and then coming out playing so well against Argentina, he gets injured again, the poor young man. So to be fair to the selectors, they haven't had that opportunity to give him another go. Every guy, then below Joey, whenever they've given someone a go, be it Burns, be it the Byrne brothers from Leinster or Jack, at back of the World Cup, they haven't stood up. They haven't grabbed their opportunity. Now, for one of those 4 other out halves to not have stood up and played really well and said, I'm your man, that's a problem. And then for your next guy, which is Joey, to be in his injury profile that he's had, that's a big problem. What they're blessed with is that Sexton has come back from some really bad form, and when you play that long, he's going to have some bad form that he had in 2019, and he's come back in and he's playing really well. And also his forward pack are laying down a foundation, and he's getting it for him, and Jamison Gibson Park is giving him fast ball, so that makes your role as a 10 much easier. But yeah, if Sexton falls, he's a giant. He's cast this great shadow. It's hard to grow in the shadow of a giant. And that's a problem. But what the selectors can only do what they can do, and I think Sexton's still head and shoulders above every other 10 in the country, unfortunately for the selectors.
And he's captain, and so therefore you have to pick him. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like anybody else has put their hand up and said, "Oh, put me in, coach. It's my time." It's like, well, no. I mean, you're going to have to wrestle this off him, and we're made it even harder to wrestle it off him because he's the captain.
Yeah, and Johnny's personality, he's not a champion by accident. He's an aggressive winner. He hates losing, and he wears his heart in his sleeve, and he drives the standards of the team, and he drives his own standards. And if you fall below those standards, he'll let you know. And that's what you want from a leader. And the players obviously respect him, and he's bringing this great, massive library of wisdom and understanding of the game into it. So he is the outstanding leader at the moment. There's no doubt about it. As I said, I wrote him off in 2019. He still had a great career. He'll still go into the World Rugby Hall of Fame, even if he finished in 2019. But it's just a mark of the man's greatness that he's come back from that, and he's all the things that you just said. He is the best player and the best leader in the country. So, but the Italy game, I hope they don't play him. I hope that's the time we get to see some of these other guys, and I hope that, and I'm pretty certain in the later stages of games that are pretty much in the bag, that we see Carberry getting 20, 25, 30 minutes in a game.
Yeah, Matt, that's what I was going to ask next. Just how do you develop these lads to get game time, but also as a coach, he's going to be thinking, I need to win now. I also need to keep the team tight knit, know how to play together, all of those things. When sometimes if you're introducing lads, that sort of falls aside. So how do you balance all of that? It's really tough to do.
And it's something, actually, you're hit the nail on the head. It's something Irish rugby has not done well at the international level, and that's really my criticism of the planning for World Cups. I have just not seen the planning in the depth that's required to be successful at World Cups, and that's why, quarterfinal after quarterfinal after quarterfinal exit, Ireland have done that, because they focus on the 1 year cycle, and the Six Nations become so important rather than the long term of the 4 year. The other thing Ireland haven't done well is they haven't used the summer tours to develop those young players like they could. I'll take you back to when Joe Schmidt took Ireland to Australia. But I think it was 2017, and I was really hoping he'd leave his big guns behind and develop the younger players, give them a go. They might have lost the series in Australia. They won it. In the end, who cares? Who cares? They won 2-1. But that didn't do anything for the World Cup. So that was then. Now, we've got to give Andy Farrell credit. Somewhere in the last 6 months, he's had a road to Emmaus moment. He's looked in the mirror and realised, if I don't do something really different here, I'm not going to be the coach of Ireland at the next World Cup. And I believe they didn't beat England in the last game of the Six Nations, his position would have come under great pressure, and rightly so. I thought the team hadn't progressed. They were playing some really poor rugby, and they looked rudderless. Now, somewhere between that England game and November, there has been a massive change, not an incremental change, a massive change. They've changed the personnel, which is a good thing, and they've changed the way they've played, which is the massive thing they've done. And to me, they've followed the Leinster path. And there is no, I coach Leinster, right? But so it's not me saying, Leinster are better than others. It's just you've got a team that's been really successful in Europe. That's exactly what New Zealand do. They've taken their team that are successful in Super Rugby, the Crusaders, and they've mirrored the national performance on that. But not only that, they've taken it down to schoolboy level. So if you go to New Zealand, at schoolboys, they're all playing the way the All Blacks play. If you go to Leinster, go to the schools, you go to St Michael's, Blackrock, you go to these schools, they're all playing the way Leinster plays. So they've just taken a system that's been from schoolboy, hugely successful at provincial, and they've just done the right thing and linked it into the national team, which is what Ireland should have done 10, 15 years ago. We used to do it, and this is for all the Munster people, that's what Ireland used to do when Munster was successful. The Irish team played very similar to the Munster team. We just haven't had that progression, and Farrell deserves great credit, praise and support for what he's done. So getting back to your point, Ashley, that has been a great change for Ireland. So what does this team need now, this young team and the team that's got so many changes to it? It needs to win. So if they can win at home, pick up one game against England or France, and I suspect it's England away, that's a great championship. If they then go to New Zealand, now let me tell you, you can't go to New Zealand and develop. So Brian Ashton 20 years ago took an Irish team down there, a development team. They got their absolute bum smacked, 50 points by every side. Brian lost his job, and all those boys had their confidence smashed. New Zealand is the hardest place in the world to go to. So you have to go there with a really established team to play 3 tests against the best team in the world, still on their home soil. No one's won at Eden Park since the 1980s. So if Ireland can go down and steal a test, and I think their first test, New Zealand are always vulnerable. They can steal a test. That's a magnificent 6 months for Irish rugby. All at home, one win and get Twickenham. And then if you lose to France and you can pick up a historic test win in New Zealand, this Irish team would be flying, absolutely flying. And I think that is it's a stretch goal, but I think this team is very capable if they keep playing the same way, which I am really hopeful they do.
Stretch goals, always good to have them. Matt, great to have you with us again. Thanks a million.
Great, Ashton. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the big kick-off this weekend. It's Matt Williams giving us his thoughts there. 12 minutes past 9 this morning on OTB AM.